Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Review. Hi friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we have another weekly wrap up and I also have an exciting task, which is hosting another toy giveaway with Bessa, but we'll get back to that in just a second. First off, I want to say a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members who help make what I do here possible. I'll keep saying it every week. I don't care if I'm a broken record. It is a broken record that I love to play, and that is I could not do what I do without you guys. And right now, as a thank you, I have some giveaways going on in my Patreon that are for free. You can follow me for free over there and still get in on them. The first giveaway that I did was actually an ARC copy of Firebird by Juliet Cross, which I'll be sending out shortly. I have another giveaway up right now with some S.J. Tilly swag along with some items from my Etsy. And I will also have more giveaways coming. There's a few that are in the works still, so make sure you're following me over there to jump in on those, all right? But I really want to say an extra special thank you to Natalie R, who just joined my channel memberships. Those you join here, I was going to say over there on YouTube. Here on YouTube, you get early access to videos, you get to vote in polls and all that good stuff like that. And then there is Christine L, who just joined my Patreon. So thank you so much. We're so happy to have you. Before we get into the books that I read, I need to share something amazing with you guys. I've literally never seen anything like it. And when I got these in the mail, they are absolutely beautiful. So I would like to introduce to you the Whisper collection from Bessa. This is the first collection of completely silent toys from them. As we said, they are absolutely beautiful. I love the color. I love the feel of these. Like, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. So the brains over at Bessa created what they call Whisper Tech, and it somehow delivers an assortment of toys in all shapes that hit all the right spots in every body type, and they do it completely in silence, which is really what we want. It's so awesome. They're all so quiet. There's no noise. They're still full of power, and they hit everything they're supposed to for you. It's fantastic. So of course I've got to hook you up as I do, as Bessa does. And as I said, I'm super excited to get to share this whole collection with you. And I'm honored that I was asked to be a part of this, right? So I'm going to be doing a giveaway where literally everyone wins a free toy. So before I get into the details of each one, let me show you the silence, okay? Find the little button here. That's right. It's literally turned on right now. Isn't that crazy? It's nearly inaudible. I don't even know if you can hear it because I don't have the most powerful microphone, so you probably can't even hear it at all. But you can tell it's going. It's jumping around. So these are very quiet, but they still pack a serious punch. Even this smallest little one right here. I mean, come on. So you can put your pleasure first without waking the entire household or even your partner who's sleeping right next to you. And now in whatever format you'd like. So there is this the Whisper Bullet, which is a silent vibe that has 5 speeds. It's tiny and it's literally inaudible and the power is insane, as you can see. That was just the lowest setting. Maybe I'll turn it on here. Like that is the highest setting. That is bouncing all over the place. We love to see it. Then there is the Whisper Rabbit and the Whisper Vibe. I have to tell you, I was very excited to get this one. I've been wanting to get my hands on one of these and I almost bought it for Valentine's Day. But you know what? Bessa was hooking me up here. So with the Whisper Vibe, it's the quietest G-spot stimulation that you can find. Of course, we'll turn it on here for you. You know, that's really got some action going right there. Love it. And then there is the Whisper Rabbit, which is has independent adjustable clitoral stimulation. So there's the two, sorry, it's hard to see. There's the 2 different buttons that control both the main motor here and then this one, right? So in case you want to step it up a notch, but still have it be quiet. And as I was saying, like, I need to be careful what motions I'm making with my hands on these, but they really are. You just want to touch them. They're so soft. So honestly, this collection is everything. As I said, I was so excited opening these up. This is so fantastic. And it's the collection that you have to see it and not hear it to believe it. So that's why I'm hooking everyone who signs up for my giveaway with a free Whisper Vibe or a free Rose toy with the purchase of a Whisper toy. So click the link in my description and grab your new vibe. The big question is They'll be silent, but will you be? We love it. Thank you so much for Bessa for sponsoring this video. Now let's get into my weekly reads. Okay, everybody. So this was a fantastic week, okay? I am feeling back on top. I read 10 books this full first week of March, which is awesome. A few of them, of course, were rereads because we had, I had Patreon books I was still finishing, and I was doing my reading for Claire Kent, and it was still a lot of fun to get to some of these. But let's get started with these. So the first one I read was Crow by A. Zavarelli, and this was me finishing up my Patreon read. As I had said, I was a bit like, I didn't have a reading slump. As I often say, I don't really get reading slumps, but I do get in these situations where it's hard for me to finish a book. I talk about that a lot, and that's particularly difficult when I have books that I like need to be getting to, you know. It can be a little bit disheartening when I'm starting all these books and I'm not getting anything finished. But this week was when I really turned it up, and I do have to thank the readathon because I am participating in the Realmathon. I am a co-lead for the Monarchs, and it is very satisfying to get to turn in a book and get to count those points. So it's definitely helpful to have a I mean, that's what a readathon is supposed to do. So it's really helping, and I've been on tons of reading sprints. I have a ton more planned to participate in this week, so keep your eye out for that. But anyway, I got distracted. So Crow was the first one that I started and finished in March. The other one that I finished last week, I had already started. And this was a book that had been on my TBR for a long time, as I've said, and it finally got picked for our theme of February, which was Mafia romance. So we got it. We got that checked off. I won't be telling you my full thoughts here because that is an exclusive read for Patreon. You can go check that out over there. As I said, I'm really pushing people over to my Patreon. You can follow me for free over there, and you can even do a free trial where if you do a free trial at the it's at the Swooning for You level, that does get you access to all of my reviews. So if you want to see if you like those exclusive reviews over there, you can go and watch some, see if you like what's happening. You'll be able to check that out, and you'll get a free trial for a little bit and then see if you want to. I am also, sorry I keep plugging this so much, but I gotta do it. I gotta do it. It's my business, right? We gotta plug what we gotta plug. Also, during my birthday month, I'm giving away some free 2-month memberships that are at the $10 level, which gets you access to all my vlogs. So those are really fun to give those away and see if anyone wants to stick around with me. It's a fun time. So yeah, I read The Crow. That was a mafia romance. The heroine actually does some MMA fighting in it. And I will continue with this series for sure. And maybe when I read it in the future, I'll do a bit of a recap about what I felt about Crow. But for now, that will be exclusive to my patrons for sure. I listened to a lot of audiobooks this week. It was fantastic. There were some great ones. I listened to The Last Guy on Earth by Serena Bowen. This is her most recent release in her, I can't remember what it's called, like The Hockey Guys or whatever. But these are all MM romance. And this one was narrated by Teddy Hamilton and J.F. Harding. It was a dual narration. And this was Clay and Jethro. And what's really cool is that this was a coach and a player romance. And I think it's Clay who is the coach. And we discover that Clay and Jethro, long time ago at the beginning of their careers, they were actually kind of secret lovers with each other. They were roommates and secret lovers. And neither of them was out about how they felt, and things didn't go well, and they end up going their separate ways. Clay ended up getting injured not too long into his career, and he became a coach, and now he's a coach for I think they're in Colorado team. Now, Jethro, he is a veteran player. He's getting near the end of his time, but he has a lot going on in his personal life. So he's actually a guardian to his nephew. His sister is actually a struggling addict, and she is currently in a rehab that Jethro paid out the nose for to get her there instead of, she is in prison, but she was able to do, a rehab facility to get her, out of prison because she wasn't getting off of drugs being in prison. It's still easy to get a hold of it there for her. And he just carries a lot of weight because he is officially the guardian of his nephew. But you know, his nephew still really loves his mom, and he is not happy that they're having to move to Colorado when he gets traded basically in the middle of the night. He has like 2 days to go. That is one of the like intense things in hockey romances, is that is a high stakes thing to just get traded out of nowhere. And then if you don't do good enough, you could be traded again out of nowhere. It's very intense a lot of times. And so Jethro moves his, you know, nephew, him and his dad, because his dad is kind of the one looking after this kid, as well as Jethro's looking after his dad, because his dad doesn't have the greatest of health. So all of these things. So it's a very unhappy move for him. Now he's also being coached by his ex-lover, and they both are very antagonistic towards each other. Not like completely on the team, but there's a lot of friction between the two of them. And so this was a very slow burn, and it also was a flashback situation. So just putting that out there, y'all know I'm pretty vocal about that. Flashbacks are not really my thing. I would much prefer that you just told the flashback story and then jump ahead, or if you're going to do it, just have a few key scenes that you flash back to. That's just a personal preference. I have very rarely read like flashbacks done where they really work when they're an alternating story. It's just not my thing. I end up skipping them because I'm like, I want you to tell me this story with the layers now. I don't want you to crutch with showing me the scenes, right? That's how I feel about it. Now, some people disagree because they would rather see it than be told about it, which is what happens if you don't have the flashbacks, right? But again, I think then you should just do a split like time in your book. You know, I don't love when we skip back for big chunks like that. So personal preference. The slow burn of this was very beautiful though. I loved this couple. There was so much they had to work through, and you have two guys who are pretty stoic about it. And again, both of them are kind of hiding their sexuality. And it's also very interesting because if you read the previous books in the series, which you can read this as a standalone, like a lot of things you can, but this is the third book in this series, and they're, you know, pretty connected because in a previous book, one of the players on Clay's team has come out. And so they're doing a lot of things to support him, and he's feeling a bit like a hypocrite because he is really proud of his player for doing that and being out. But the same reason why this guy was nervous to come out, he didn't want to be the poster boy. He just wanted to play hockey and be accepted. Clay, that's a lot of the reasons why he never came out with it, right? And so he's feeling a bit of a hypocrite about that. And then having the one man who knows his sexuality be there, and it be kind of, it's just a lot of tension for them, right? But it was still really beautiful. Serena Bowen writes really beautiful. This is not all about the lust at all. There's a lot they're working through. But I did end up at a 4-star with this, and it's a 2 on the spice scale, just for the fact that, like, I feel like I skipped a lot of this book, and that's my choice. I don't love all the flashbacks, but it just wasn't vibing for me. But I still had a good time with it, and the audiobook, I mean, I love J.F. Harding and Teddy Hamilton. They give me a great story, so there was that. Okay, next up, I had a reread of All My Love by Daisy Jane. Now, I just want to say, quite the book to talk about in comparison, like in conjunction with having a Bessa sponsorship, I'm not gonna lie, because this book should be called like the Wet and Wild Time with Dolly. Okay, there's just no other way to say it. This is an extremely erotic series from Daisy Jane. Even though this couple doesn't even have sex together until almost 80% in. There's a lot of fantasies that Dolly has, and this is a stalker romance. This time around, I did officially list this as a dark small town romance, and I actually have it in a video that came out yesterday about like why I think it's a dark in the small town. Because she is a stalker, and the things she does are terrifying, and it's one of those that I think Daisy Jane was so clever to do a gender swap. Definitely not that I haven't read male stalker romances. I've read a whole bunch of them, but they are definitely one where you feel very like, you're like, wow, I love how obsessed he is, but this wouldn't be cool if it was happening in real life. Same is true for Dolly here. She's maybe not supposed to seem like as much of a threat because she's this tiny young woman who is absolutely obsessed with her neighbor, who's a single dad. She's been into him since she was 15, but she's been waiting because she knew she couldn't like push herself on him when she was young because he's too good of a man to have done anything about it. And he honestly hasn't thought about her as anything except the pretty neighbor who sometimes babysits his son until just recently. But she's been watching and stalking him for ages, just waiting for the right time to make a move on him. She also does love his son very much. That is one of the things that makes her palatable to me, even now in this reread. Because I will say, rereading this, it was tougher. I annotated this for one of my patrons, and I was really excited to reread it. And it was a bit harder to read this time, which I think it's because a lot of the plot holes and the ridiculousness weren't as just like quirky and over the top this time. This time they truly felt like, are we going to get therapy by the end of this? You know, and also because it isn't fully billed as a dark romance, right? And so for me, as someone who reads a full, vast, array of that, when I'm reading dark romance, I'm willing to let those things go and just go with the vibe of like, okay, this is what we're doing in this story. But if you aren't completely billing your story as dark romance, well, then I need to put a little bit more parameters around it of keeping it more contemporary and like, would this be acceptable, right? That's how I view it. It's still fiction. It still can be whatever it wants. But because this book isn't quite saying it's a dark romance, it's just saying it's like a kinky, spicy contemporary romance, there are things Dolly does that really give you the ick. And like, they're supposed to give you the ick. And I don't even mean the using a toothbrush to masturbate with or drinking the rest of his coffee so you can touch where his lips touch. Like, that is its own thing. That is her, like, who she is. But just some of her, just the way she talks and the way it is very infantilizing of her. And that's just, it's tough to get through. So there were things this time around that it was tougher to suspend my disbelief than it was the first time, where when I read this first time, I had no idea what I was getting into. It has a lot of kinky things that I like. I've recommended this in a lot of videos, and I still stand by it. I'll get to why by the end. But this time around, I didn't have that like shock and awe part to it. I was just kind of like, are we really doing this? Like, is anyone, do we see what we're doing? And so that made it a bit more difficult. But what does work for this is honestly how much Dolly loves his little boy, and how, she really never liked the wife that I had in the beginning, and she ended up abandoning these two. And so that was solidified for her, and she's had to watch him. He hasn't really dated anyone else during that time. So she's been able to just like wait till she's old enough. She's like, I'm almost old enough where I can make it, because she is 20 and he's 38, right? So a full generation type of thing older than her or whatever. But when his sister starts pushing him to date, he starts dating this woman. And now Dolly is like, I've waited all this time, and now he's dating this woman who's trying to take my place and doesn't even really care about this little boy. And we really see her start to go feral. And so she does some of those tendencies. And what I still think is clever about this is a lot of the things she does would be immediate. She is the red flag, like Dolly's the red flag in this one instead of the guy being it. And I always think it's interesting to challenge your perspectives of that, because we talk all the time about how we like the red flag guys in our dark romance or whatever, like we're okay with it. And I really had to think about why I'm more disturbed with Dolly. Well, I'll tell you too, she does creepier stuff than some of the guys that I've read be stalkers that are somehow more endearing when she does it, but also it creeps me out because I'm like, ugh. So, but that again is what makes this book so clever, because even as you're thinking that, I'm thinking, wow, Daisy Jane is really making me, examine my biases and see how I feel about that. And I love books like that. So again, that was why it wowed me. It also wows me because yes, it has tons of kinks in here that I don't normally read and that I love to be able to recommend. And I still think that if you go into this fully knowing it's absolutely bonkers, fully knowing that there is literally a dedication at the beginning of this that says, you may DNF because of a toothbrush. Like, those are the things you gotta know. And Daisy Jane is known for doing that. She has a book in another series that you may DNF because of a cucumber, okay? Like, that's the kind of stuff she's writing. And you really just gotta know that going in. Think of this almost with the same fascination that people read, like, The Romance with the Door or whatever, right? Like, that's what you're gonna get. So Dolly wins me over in little bits because of how truly earnest she is. She's right on that line of like, this is the kind of obsessive stalker that what would have happened if Hudson rejected her, right? Because to me, she reads that if he had rejected her, she could have turned into a slasher person, right? But what stops that is that she does love that little boy, and she has nothing but genuine affection and care, and she does some such sweet things for that little boy that I didn't believe that if he rejected her, she would go scorched earth. Like, I think she would have been absolutely broken and probably would have had to need, I mean, she does need professional help, but I think she truly would have needed like institutional help if this man like spurned her. But somehow her and Hudson like make it work. Okay. So anyway, did I analyze this more than I need to? Yes. But the kinks in this one that I think, you know, I've recommended this in so many of my kinky videos, right? Because this has breeding kink, it has squirting, it has using weird items for sex, it has fisting. This was one of the, like, I haven't read fisting in many things at all. And also just the absolute, like, desperation that Dolly has for him it's a lot. But so I still rated this out of a 4. A 4 is what I gave it the first time. It's still there because even while rereading it, where I was like, man, I don't know if I still like this, her love for that little boy and for Hudson and for the life he wants to have with her works. And when Hudson finds out her obsession, it works for him without him seeming like, yes, I have someone who's absolutely obsessed with me. He had partners before who took advantage of him. He's a very wealthy man. He's the wealthiest man in the area. He's a farmer. He has a ranch there. Like, he is very well off, and women have only wanted him for that before. And so to have Dolly be absolutely obsessed with like him, he knows, he's like, this is wrong. I feel like I'm taking advantage of a younger woman, but also she's literally giving herself to me fully. Like, we understand why he can't quite say no to that, you know? So anyway, it still stands at a 4. I'm still going to recommend it and stuff, but you got to be in the right mood for it. Save it if you need it for a bingo prompt or something, or you want to try a female stalker. But I will keep it on the dark romance side, just a lighter dark romance, because she is a stalker. And again, if they had been switched, which I have read, right? Like just a couple weeks ago when I read the For Fillies and Monsters, that is almost like, you know, the male stalker version, right? Which we've read a lot of. So anyway, need to move along here. Okay, so then I had an ALC of Deal with the Devil by Deborah Garland. So this is the next book in the Astoria Royal series, which this whole series is out right now, but I've been reviewing the audiobooks as they came out. So I'm waiting as those come out. And this one I actually reviewed for Must Love Audio. A lot of mine are with Must Love Audio, with the author agency, which I've shared before. They have ALCs available sometimes. Particularly, they've had ALCs for some of these Mafia ones and a few other ones. So if you're unable to get in with Must Love Audio, because they do have a very small amount of people they can have on there, the author agency is another great place to go. So this one is a guy that I've really been waiting for. So this is duet narration, and we had Troy Duran, which if you don't remember, no, Troy Duran is the voice of all of the, of the JT Guy Singer books. He did like all of the men in that series, which was duet narration. We love it. And Lexi Evans. And this was a Russian meets the Irish Mafia we had going on. And this is an age gap, arranged marriage. Well, not arranged marriage, we'll get to it. Like a marriage of convenience. Grumpy Sunshine. Our heroine is a ballet dancer. Our hero is an enforcer. He is actually a mafia guy who wanted to be a priest, but instead of being a priest, he murdered a priest and then kind of got sent away to... I can't remember what it was called. It was kind of this like school. It taught him to be an enforcer, but also it was a bit of a punishment because he killed a man. Now, the priest he killed was doing some bad things to little Catholic boys, which you may guess, and it kind of ruined Lachlan because he wanted to be a priest, and then he wasn't. So our heroine is Katya, and she is actually the bastard daughter of a Pacan, and her older sister, who is the legitimate daughter, has run away. Now, what is fascinating about this is if you've been reading the series in order, which you should, they're great, love this Mafia series. If you've been reading the series in order, you'll know that there is this Bratva princess who disappeared, and she's been gone for years, and we haven't been able to find her. I believe the last book, we're finally going to find her, but she's been gone. And now we're getting the point of view of what made her go, because we've heard things of why she's gone. And so Katya, again, this is her older sister. She'd been brought to like live in their home when her father had like killed off the mother, which was a mistress. The mother was a mistress. And so she was not cared for by like Katya's mother, which again, we can't completely blame her, but also don't take it out on Katya. What did she do to deserve it? But also we understand the man moves his love child in with us, right? So yeah, so there was that. But then, anyway, so Katya and Lachlan had like run into each other at another thing a few years ago before that sister had disappeared. So again, now we get Katya's POV, and she was actually there the night that her sister disappeared. She helped her sister disappear, and there was some heavy consequences for that. Now her father doesn't know she helped, but he does somehow like blame her for the sister going, and now she's the only bargaining chip he has left is Katya, but she's a bastard daughter, so what is he going to be able to use her for? He wasn't planning to have to do anything with her. She was actually going to get to like go to ballet school and do what she wanted to do, but now she has to become a part of the politics of it all, right? So she's going to be forced to marry the like mayor of Moscow or something like that, and when she finds out about that, she's absolutely crushed, particularly when it's clear that this man is, you know, going to use her for breeding. He's using her to get on the good side of the pecan so that he's able to be mayor, right? You need the mafia, the bratva on your side. And she's going to be forced into this. Now, Lachlan finds out about it, and he has always kind of had a soft spot for her since he ran into her those years ago. Maybe obsessing about her a little bit, but again, he doesn't think he should be with any woman because of a lot of the things he's been through. He's also kind of doing penance for just different things in his life. But when he hears what's going to happen to her, and he hears about how abusive and disgusting this guy is, he steps in. And so we actually have one of my favorite things, which I'm actually thinking about making a video about this. So tell me if you want to see it. Tell me if you want to see it. And it is where he kills the husband at the altar and marries her instead and makes her his bride. Kind of forcing an alliance between the Irish and the bratva, because either the bratva pecan can accept it or be fucked, you know, because his last bargaining chip has just been taken out from under him. And so Lachlan gets her to marry him. So this is where I said, like, this isn't an arranged marriage. It's kind of a marriage of convenience, but it's also kind of forced on her, but she's okay with it. So it's one of these weird ones where a lot of times where there is the, like, I married you instead, it's like a forced thing. But in this case, he's like, marry me, I'll keep you safe and make sure you get to do what you want, and you won't have to go to Moscow and like be married to this guy or whatever. And so she's like, sure. So she marries him. And then of course the thing is though, is if she doesn't consummate the marriage with him, her father could still try to like off Lachlan and then still marry her off to someone else, right? If she's not. So he takes her home with him and is like, we do have to consummate this marriage, but once we do that, I'll leave you alone. You can pursue your dream. Like, I'm not here to do that. He just wanted to save her. He just wanted to do that. Even though it's gonna fuck up a lot of things. But I love that because this was such a sweet romance between these two. It really was. I loved it so much. It's my favorite in the series. The way that they both have so many, like they had so many expectations on them. The both of them, you know, not being the most beloved or most wanted child. Obviously for him, it was a much darker, abusive track, but she was also, you know, very unloved. She's had her mother taken from her. She was treated like a, you know, third-class citizen, but still a bargaining chip for her father. And that's just, it's so unfair. It's so unfair what has happened to Katya. And Lachlan just wants to absolutely love her. And she is not a shrinking violet and not too upset about the fact that she has to consummate her marriage with her husband. And so I love that too, because even though she's a virgin and is like nervous about it, now that she's paired with Lachlan, she's like, let's do it. So yeah, I won't say anymore. I've already talked about this one enough, but that's really just the setup of this one. There's still a lot more to go. But what was super exciting by the end is, as I said, we're finally going to find out where her sister's been and what's been going on. And I'm so excited, which that last book in this series is out, as I said, but I'm waiting for the audiobook because I love these. I love these. And the final thing I wanted to say is that Troy Duran, he has been in every one of these books because this is in a lot of ways like Mr. Swoony, right? Like those books by Piper Rain. This series has like the heroes kind of playing themselves in each book. So there is Troy Duran and Lexi Evans are the main two, but then there are the heroes from previous books that still voice themselves. And so that being said, like Troy Duran was still like voicing characters in the other ones. So we finally got to have his book. And this just gives me little kicks out of it too, because Troy Duran has also been doing that in Piper Rain, and his book is the next book in that one too. So anyway, just the little nerdy things as like a audiobook listener and reader that like get you excited and stuff like that. So yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I really did. I think also I gave it 5 stars because I've been giving the books in this series 4 or 4.5, and this truly is my favorite. I don't have a lot of complaints about it because it was just a genuine one. There isn't a lot of misunderstandings. There wasn't a third act breakup in this at all. It was great. So kinky wise, you know, it is like a virgin. It's a he's too big type of one. There's big size difference. She's a tiny ballerina and he's this ginormous Irish gangster. And yeah, for trigger warnings with this, there is of course like there's domestic abuse kind of happening between like how her father treats her. I will say like her father isn't beating her. He definitely is berating her and mistreating her. And then her potential husband is abusive to her, but you know, he gets pretty early on. So, and then there is like loss of her mother, and there of course is a lot of violence in here, and oh, it feels good to talk so much about books. Oh, I love it. Okay, next there was Faking the Shot by Kendall Hale, and this was a ALC with Must Love Audio. This was narrated by Lee Samuels and Samantha Peachwood, and I believe this one is dual narrated, and this one is a PR situation. I actually read, well, I've been reading a lot of PR ones. I could probably make a video about that too. Let me know if you like ones where she is like his PR. But yeah, this is a hockey romance, and we have kind of a like veteran player who has a really bad reputation, and our heroine is working for a PR company, and she gets assigned to handle his. And what's cute is they've actually met before when they end up both playing trivia at like a bar night, which I love. I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but it happens every Monday night here in Fargo at one of the downtown pizza places. And I used to go with my friends all the time. Now I don't go like quite as much because I'm an old lady, and it doesn't even start till 8:30 at night, and I don't always want to go out. But they have a trivia night, and it was so cute. Like it was so cute, but he gets on her nerves because he just like knows all the answers, and he's like wearing glasses and everything and seems all nerdy and whatever. And then she discovers that this is the hockey player she has to help revive his image. And it turns out this turns into a fake dating situation to help do that. And so they're forced to spend a lot of time together. So this is Grumpy Sunshine. He's very grumpy, and they're trying to work on his image. So Caden is his name, Val is hers. And yeah, so there's lots of chemistry between the two of them. What I thought was kind of interesting in this one is he's trying to kind of egg her on into sleeping with him pretty early on. And she's just like, dude, no, it's not happening. Like, stop it. I'm here for this. But she is super attracted to him. And so they have a lot of fake dates that they have to go on. And also I really love because when he ends up like taking her to see his family to for like a weekend away. This series is actually going to be about his family. He has 2 dads, and there's 6 or 7 siblings, I believe. I think he's a twin, or he has twin, but I think he's a twin. But we get to meet his whole family. And so there was even little aspects of this being found family for her, because his whole family just like loves her so much. So I really enjoyed that about these two. So yeah, this was a good time. I was actually a little bit surprised. We had a little bit of surprise kink in this one. You wouldn't necessarily think with this cover. It didn't go too far or anything, but there was a little bit of cock warming in here. She has a bit of OCD, a bit of like anxiousness. And one of the times when they're like fucking, he's like, I want you to just keep sucking my dick for a while and just chill. I'm sorry. I love that type of thing. And she actually then, like, after she's reflecting and she's like, I don't know why that worked, but just having him tell me to focus on something like really helped. Anyway, you guys know I've done a whole video on those type of recommendations. So have at it if you'd like some of those. But yeah, this was pretty good. I Some of the conflict in this one was A, super predictable, and B, just kind of like whatever, but it wasn't bad. I ended up with a 4-star for this one, a 3.5 on the spice scale, mostly because of that little bit of surprise kink in there. And yeah, this is the start of a new series, so I will definitely read more from this one. I've read one other Kindle Hale before. I think I read another Kindle Hale for Must Love Audio before. But okay. Next up, there was Shattered Dreams by Natasha Madison. So this was one I read for a patron to annotate it. I read it for Amber, and I have never read Natasha Madison, so this was a new to me one. I have eyed her up for quite a while because this woman is prolific AF. Like, if you look up the backlist that this woman has, hot damn, there are a lot of them. And yeah, this is one that Amber really, really enjoyed for the angst to it, I guess. And yeah, I was annotating this one, and I will say I had a rough start with it. I knew it was going to be a rough start. I could tell based on what the premise was it would be. And part of this was too, like, this was that time I was talking about where, like, I had a bunch of books started and I had to get this one done. Like, this was February's book, and I was like on March 5th or whatever, and I was like, gotta get this done. And so I was pushing through it. And I do think that reading it on page and annotating it was a bit tough because there's a lot of repetitive things about this book. Now, before I gave this book 4 stars. I've already done it in like a vlog. I talked to Amber about how I felt about it. So she knows I'm not ripping to shreds a book she loved. But I'm going to point out the things that really annoyed me because this is some like writing quirks I've discovered, right? So the setup of this one, though, is that it's a best friend's ex, dead best friend's, not ex. No, because they weren't exes. So how do I explain this? So our heroine, her name is Autumn, and her best friend was dating Charlie. And when they were young adults, I can't remember what ages they quite were. I can't remember if they were like, seniors in high school or whatever they were. They might have been early 20s because I think they were legally drinking, but they might not have been. I don't remember. Whatever age, they're very young adults. And she was dating, Autumn was dating one of the richest guys in town. His name is Waylon. And Charlie and her friend Jennifer were dating, and like he had all these plans with Jennifer. They were endgame. They knew from a young age. And this group had been out partying. There were these 2 couples and then another 2 people all in this car. And Waylon, again, who was Autumn's boyfriend, he was driving and he got behind the wheel and they all piled in because some of them were also drinking, but they got in an accident. And in this accident, Waylon, the driver, and Jennifer died. And now it's been 8 years. And see, this was the one, though, where flashbacks did work in this one for me. There was other things that I was struggling with, but the flashbacks were actually good because we started with the event. The first, 3 chapters of this book where we see how much Charlie loved Jennifer. We see a little bit of the relationship Autumn and Waylon have with each other. We see that relationship from both Charlie's point of view and from Autumn's point of view, and it doesn't look like the healthiest relationship that Jennifer is in. That Autumn is in. Jennifer and Charlie, they have a great relationship. Like, again, they're endgame, so sweet, sweethearts, it's beautiful. And then this accident happens, and now we skip ahead 8 years, and Autumn has come back to town because her father is sick, and her brother and dad, they own a whiskey company, and the business is failing, and her father is sick, and she comes back home because she needs to help. And she knows it's a risk because Charlie never wanted to see her again. He hates her for some reason. We don't quite know. And she had kind of been, we discover, run out of town 6 years ago, 8 years ago. I don't remember. It was a couple years after the accident. She doesn't get run out of town right away or anything, but she hadn't been back really. And so now she's back in town, and not only does Charlie hate her, but a lot of people in town don't like her, and we don't understand why, because it's she lost her friend and her boyfriend. Why is it okay for Charlie to be so hateful towards her, and her just have to take it, right? And we don't fully know why this is happening. Okay, so where I think the flashbacks in this one work is that they're just little things to backfill information. They're not whole chapters in the past. They're in italics, and they're just filling in things, right? As to kind of clarify what characters are remembering. So like Charlie will share a scene from his point of view and we'll see why he thought that and we'll see the scene. And then in a couple chapters later, Autumn sees the scene and we see what happened, what was going on in her mind when said scene happened. So those were just little pieces of color going through. Now, I don't want to tell you fully why like Charlie hates her, but he really fucks up is the point. For the first half of this book, he's so angry that she's back. She's like, dude, my dad's sick. I need to be here. He's like, I don't care. I don't want to see you. He's chasing her away from like the accident site because Charlie has made this accident site like his personal. It's not even that he has a ton of stuff set up there, but it's like a shrine to him. He goes there when he can't sleep. He's basically like an alcoholic. He sleeps around, but whenever he sleeps with someone, he only sees Jennifer's face. He is deep in his grief still. Like he's still like living in the house that he wanted to be for Jennifer. He has her picture by his bed. Like he's deeply still grieving for her. And even though like he has a business too, like he runs a ranch, he actually does kind of like, I think like rescue horses. And so he has a lot going, but he's still so stuck in this. And now to have Autumn back, you know, it might seem like, is this going to throw him into a spiral? But when he gets a bit more color about the thing he's been blaming her for, which again, I'm not going to like spill all those beans or whatever, but there's a thing he's blaming her for that is so not her fault. Not that the accident was not her fault at all to begin with. She wasn't the one driving. She wasn't the one drunk driving. But there is a specific reason why Charlie's blaming her for it, and he needs someone to hate, and he's hated her. And she's finally like, I am not going to hold the weight of your hate anymore. Here's what actually happened, right? And so for this first book, you know, it's kind of like, or this first half of the book, it's kind of like what I've said, you know, about By the Letter recently, where you see this hero accruing a debt of like, you're going to need to grovel for what you've done. And you have a bit of sympathy for him. He lost the love of his life, but it also like grief is strange. I would never tell someone they just have to be over something, but it's also like, dude, you need therapy and you need to stop. Like, why are you hating this girl 8 years on? Jennifer wouldn't have wanted you to live this way, and Amber or Autumn doesn't deserve the hate, right? But we see him accruing this debt. But once he finds it all out, it really makes him have to reflect on everything he's thought. And he does start to have those thoughts of like, would Jennifer want me to be treating her best friend like this? You know, and we actually are both missing the same person, you know? I think of what would happen if my best friend died like that. Like, of course I can't miss her the same way that her husband did, but I've been her best friend for 32 years, right? And he's had her for, again, his relationship with her is like, they are one, they're in love, but I would be a shell of myself if my best friend died, because she's been my friend my entire life, right? So there's just a lot. So anyway, this was very tough to read, not just because of the topic, like I knew that was there. There's a lot of angst in that. And then once Charlie flipped the switch, loved watching that. I completely understand. Like it was a very satisfying journey. Like I did tear up a few times, particularly like the end of it was really beautiful. I could almost cry. Like there were a lot of beautiful things in it. There were just some things I like couldn't forgive with it because they went on for so long. And some of that is the writing thing, right? You know, like I'm not a person who picks apart writing styles much at all. I can get on board. But when I'm annotating and I'm like seeing the things in my face, like if I'd been reading this on Kindle and I'd just been scrolling through, you know, reading very quickly, which is how I do, like I have a very high reading speed, I don't think it would have been as difficult for me. But when I'm highlighting, I'm noticing the repetitive things. And this author has a serious issue with repetitive words, okay? Repetitive phrases, and also of overlapping scenes, okay? Something that, let's say, if it was in a serialized story, I brought up this example in my vlog when I talked about this for Amber, is that if this had been a serialized story where a chapter's coming out every week, you maybe would repeat the last couple paragraphs of the previous chapter in the next one because people haven't read it for a week. But when you're reading this all at once, they overlap scenes constantly. And there are certain phrases that get said over and over because of that, okay? So example, the first meeting with Charlie when she's back, Amber goes to Jennifer's like grave, the site to, you know, just honor her friend. And Charlie comes upon her, because as I said, he goes there all the time, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And he says this to her, okay? Then we switch to Charlie's point of view, and we see him waking up in the morning, and him, like, just feeling shitty, and he'll, like, start his day by going to see Jennifer, and so then we see him walking, and he sees Autumn, and he says, what the fuck are you doing here, when he gets there, okay? That's just one example, okay? And that would have been fine if that was the only time, right? Because we're seeing where she is, and we see his day until he runs into her. Fine. We overlapped those words of what the fuck are you doing here? Well, this happened almost every chapter when we would switch POVs. Okay, so whatever happened at the end of Charlie's chapter, we would repeat whatever words he said in Autumn's chapter, literally on the same page, right? Because if you're opening the book, and on this chapter, on this page, Charlie's chapter ended and it started with, what the fuck are you doing here? You go to the next one and it's Amber, or I'm sorry, I want to keep saying Amber because it's Autumn's point of view, and it says, and Charlie walked up to me and said, what the fuck are you doing here? And it was every chapter, you guys, every chapter. And then add on top of that, as I said, the things that I did like, which were the flashbacks where we showed it from his point of view and then her point of view. So we're also seeing, I think there's 2 or 3 flashbacks where we see from both of their point of views. So this was just an incredibly repetitive story, and it got exhausting. I know I'm being so dramatic, but I'm a dramatic woman. You know this. It just annoyed me because this was a moving story. And by the end of it, I was like, yeah, I understand why she liked this. Ooh, this was so good. But I'm looking at it and I'm like, but I wish I was the editor. And I really wish that I was the editor. Because if I was the editor, not only would I have chopped about 20 pages off just by removing repetitive things in there, right? But it would have read so much smoother because we're not like, you know, we're getting to an emotional height and then we have to back up to get back to the height. Like, it's like you're on a roller coaster and it keeps rocking back and forth. And it just really would like kill momentum, right? Because a lot of times, you know, if you end a chapter on almost like a cliffhanger bit, you're so eager to flip to the next page to be like, whatever. Well, when I get to the end of a chapter, I'm like, I don't have to keep looking because tomorrow when I pick this up, you're going to repeat exactly what I just went. Which again, is why I said, if this was a serialized book, that could work, right? You know, if you were reading this on Kindle Vella back in the day, or you were whatever, like that'd be fine. So anywho, as I said, I don't mean to beat the story to shit because I thought the short story was beautiful. And I'm sorry if I've pointed this out about a book and now you notice it, but I've had things ruined for me before, so I'm doing it for you. You're welcome. I ended up at a 4-star with this still. It was good. It was touching. As I said, I cried a few times. There were domestic abuse was an issue, death and grief, drug abuse, for drug abuse, I mean, there's alcoholism in here. Charlie's really struggling with that part, and some PTSD. So those are kind of the trigger warnings for that to be known. But just to be clear, I didn't read my friend's book and absolutely hate it. I enjoyed this. It just, when a book forces me to notice writing quirks, it's rarely a good time for me. That's just for me. Because I don't like to obsess over those things. I want to get lost in your book. And the best way to do that is for the author to tell me a story while like getting out of my way. Does that make sense? I don't know. This is just Jen. Don't come for me. That's how it is. Okay, now we have a couple rereads, so I'll go through these pretty quick. First up, I had to reread Claire Kent for one of my patrons. So one of my patrons, she had requested this entire series annotated, and we finally got to the end of it. So this is Beacon. This is book 8 in the Kindled series. So this is Mac and Anna's story. All of these take place after the apocalypse has happened, but it's still my like cozy series, right? It's the series that made me fall in love with Claire Kent, and now I work for her, which just makes me just love it. So I have lots of very happy feelings about this one, but this one and Homestead and Last Light are probably my 3 like favorite in the world, but they're all just so good. Mac and Anna, we meet all the way back at the beginning. We know that this couple has something between them, but we never fully get to see them together. And at this point, we are at year 10 after the apocalypse has happened, and things are almost starting to feel normal, but there's still, you know, it's still not a normal society. So there's a lot of like things we have to deal with. Sorry, I need a drink. And in this book, which there are 2 spin-off series from this series, Devotion is the first one, which has started. Devotion came out at the beginning of February. And that is a series that takes place, I believe, like 30 years after this, right? Lost Song will be coming in June, and we still don't quite know when that one is taking place, but there are some hints at things in here. But that series is going to be called The Wilds, and Lost Song will be the first one. And for the past like few books in this series, we hear about the Wilds, which is this big part of the country where it's very lawless. And we noticed back in Homestead, we found out that they've started like kidnapping people, not to rape and murder them, but kidnapping them for something. What are they taking them for? And in this book, Mac has kind of locked himself away for a while. He's just very like drawn out and tired of the life he's had to live, the amount of people he's had to kill. But we know how wonderful a man Mac is and what he's done for people. And so it's very hard to see him like that. And him and Anna had actually been together on and off throughout the years. And she actually is the one who broke up with him officially because he wanted more from her. And she just doesn't feel like she can offer that. Before the impact, she was a teacher and she was in a kind of abusive relationship. And so after it, and like her husband being dead and her being free, she really just wanted to, live without anything holding her down. But her and Mac had this, and again, on and off again, when they'd meet, they'd have sex. Sometimes they were like traveling together and sometimes they weren't. Sometimes she traveled with the all-female group that like rescues women in, bad situations and stuff. And Mac is just like, he's worn out. Like he doesn't really have much keeping him going. He's a loner and he's tired. And even though like he could go to any community in their vicinity and they would gladly welcome him in because, again, he's a hero. Mac is a hero. He's this big, lovable black man who will also like break anyone who is hurting the misfortunate. And again, he is our hero again and again and again in this series. I love him so much. But he's worn out. And Anna hates to see him like this. She hears that he is secluding himself off in this cabin, staying alone, and she goes to get him. And he's not welcoming to see her. Not only because it's like, this is my ex-girlfriend, it's the woman who broke my heart, but he doesn't want to have to take care of anyone anymore or have to kill or any of those things. And so I talked about this more than I meant to, but this is a very powerful one. And it is best if you've read the other books in the series. A lot of the books in the Kindle series you can read as standalones, though the best advice is to any of the books 1 through 5 you can read out of order. Like you can read Haven, Princess, Embers, and Hero kind of whenever. But after that, like Citadel, Sanctuary, Homestead, and Beacon, you should kind of read those in order because they directly like jump into each other. But anyway, this was great too. We get cameos of almost every character previously. We see the kids everyone has. I actually, at the end of this one, since this is my copy, I made a list of everyone's kids because, well, I like kind of have shared this now. One of these kids is the hero in Devotion. It's super cool. And now I had read Devotion and I reread Homestead and Beacon since I've read Devotion, and there were a lot of hints being laid. That is so cool. So anyway, I made a list of all the kids of all of our like characters before so that I'm paying attention. Not only because, again, it's literally my job to pay attention to it now, but it's also just really fun to do that. So I'm going to ask Noelle if I can make a family tree eventually. So that's another reason why I did that. But that is easily a 5-star read for me. I love it, revisiting it, and it's a 3 on the spice scale. There's always lots of sex in her books. They're not usually anything super fancy or wild, but they're really good. And again, this is the only like full-on second chance romance in the series. One of the previous books, Citadel, kind of has a second chance because they have a fling and then they're apart for 2 years and then they're back together, but that's all within the book. This one, they are a second chance and we hear about the past. So, okay, then the other one I reread was Hold. This was one that I read for work purposes. She is doing special editions of the Hold series, of Devotion, of Last Light, and of a couple of her Noelle Adams titles. And so I'm rereading these to help with that. So this is the very famous, infamous prison series. And in this one we have Rihanna, who she gets put on this prison planet, put in this prison as punishment. for some activist things that she's done. And when she gets dropped into prison, she's warned, like, you need to find the strongest man there, as it says here, and make a deal with him. So basically make a sex deal with him for protection, or you will be tossed around and used until you die. And so she does that. She sees Kane. Kane actually has a cell that he's able to lock, and like he has his own toilet. So wow, really the 5-star Ritz with this guy, right? He's really living it up, you know? And yeah, it's amazing. It's very short. There's so much that's packed in to this like 180-page story. And the whole series is of like different worlds. This is a sci-fi series. And yeah, the special edition she's going to do is actually going to be a bind up of all of these, which is great. So anyway, love revisiting that one. And then I read, I have 2 more things to talk about here. See, this is one of the long ones. It's been a while since I've had a nice long one to do for you guys. Love it. So there was The Merchant Match by Jenna Bigelow. I'm not sure how we're saying that. I don't know. But I heard about this book through Instagram, and some of my friends and people I follow on there were talking about the Tribune Temptation, which is out now, which is a full-length book. And these are set in ancient Rome. These aren't fantasy. These aren't any of that. This is a ancient Roman historical romance, okay? And I got so excited about that because when I was reflecting on this, I have only read books set in that time that were either like, you know, inspirational Christian books. I've read set in that time, or they're fantasy, right? Like example, Firebird coming out in April. That is a ancient like Roman fantasy with dragons and stuff. I've never read one that's historical like this. And that's what this is going to be. So I pre-ordered the Tribune Temptation, which again, it's out. I haven't got to that one yet, but The Merchant Match was her like newsletter bait. If you don't know what that is, it's like to get you to sign up for that and everything. And it's a 110-page novella. And so I was like, you know what? I want to test out her writing. And again, because I'm a part of the readathon, I was like, well, if I read this, I'll get some easy points from this one. And so I dived into it, and it was really, it was really sweet. Of course, it wasn't perfect. This was a novella, and also this is a debut author. So I definitely think she has some room to grow, but I thought it was really unique. It's going to take a bit to get used to like ancient Roman historicals. And I'm sure there's plenty of things that people will be like, oh, this isn't right. But I also thought it was done really well. And so we have our heroine, Gaia, who is a freed woman. So she has been released from her indentured servitude. And she also has a like teenage age son. So she's in her like mid 30s. Our hero in this one is in his like mid 40s. So it's like an older in life / just, you know, not babies or whatever. But kind of the secret is that her son is the son of her previous master, and she was in a, you know, she was his indentured servant. So this was not consensual, even if it wasn't like a rape, like it was. And her son was never acknowledged, and the mistress of the house like hated her because she, you know, knew that she was sleeping with the master and all these things. But now she's free, and she's trying to make a go of things for her son, trying to find out how she's going to provide for him. He's not quite like old enough to be supporting them, right? So there's actually money that's owed to her from her master, because there's still, I don't remember the full rules, like why, but there's something that's owed to her that hasn't been given to her. She was just like kicked out, and like she needs money for their rent and everything. And so she ends up dressing herself up as pretty as she can, and she goes to a party that's being had at her former place to basically like push that family into giving her what she deserves. And while she's there, she runs into Herminius, who is there at this party, and he's actually looking for a wife. He's a widower. He lost his wife and unborn child in childbirth, and he's just very lonely, and he's looking for a partner. And Gaia is very attracted to him, but she doesn't think she's good enough to be a, you know, he's a merchant. He's a different class than her. She's a freed woman, an ex-slave. And he's very intrigued by her, but he only sees her in these beautiful clothes at this party. So he doesn't know. And so she's like, you know, I would like to be with someone who wasn't basically forcing me to be with them. And he's so handsome, but once he knows who I am, he won't want to be with me. So she decides to let herself like be seduced, but you know, he's looking like he wants to court her. He wants to marry her. And she's like, well, you can have one night, but we don't have to get married. And he's going to have to, you know, convince her otherwise, right? So yeah, this was quick. It was only 116 pages. If you want to try something completely new and like totally different, this is that. Again, it wasn't perfect. I gave it a 3.5. I did like rate it a 3 because it just isn't a 4. It's not. But it wasn't bad, and it was the start of this author, right? And I will definitely read the Tribune Temptation, which that one is going to be a divorced woman and a politician, and it's a marriage of convenience one, and it looks really good. Like, so I pre-ordered this one, and it's out now. I'll put a link to these in the description. I'll have links to everything down there, so definitely check that out. Okay, the last one that I finished, time to wrap this up. The sun is coming for me. You guys know how this goes. The sun is coming for me. I read For Wrath and Redemption by Britt Benson. This one comes out about next week. This is a rock star romance and his PR person, okay? But even crazier than that, our PR person is Claire, who, from what I've heard, she is in another series by Britt Benson. So I've only read books in the Hometown Heartless series. And Jonah is the one who kind of is like the one kind of left behind. He is a guitarist who is a troublemaker. He's a drug addict. He was a part of a threesome that happened in the previous one, and he has more feelings than he shared. He's a very broken boy. And in the beginning of this, he finds out his mother has died of an overdose, and he kind of panics and just like freaks out and has this huge thing. Now, his father is actually currently sleeping with a woman that he works with who's much younger than him, and he's been keeping her a secret, kind of like, you know, using her a little bit. And he sends her to do PR for his son. And she's very like upset that he's sending her to do this, but she also knows she needs to do it if she wants a promotion, because she has to earn everything. Not that she doesn't want to earn it, but she's now in a place where anything she earns, if anyone ever finds out, because she wants to be acknowledged that she's been with this guy almost a year, she'll be stuck in her current position, right? This is why it's difficult to date people at your company. And so she becomes Jonah's PR person, and man, are they fireworks. So this was a very tough read. You know, these are very emotional, heavy-hitting stories. Jonah is an alcoholic and a drug addict. He has a lot of like pain from his childhood. And Claire has an eating disorder, which she had previously went to treatment for, but now with all the stress in her life, it's coming back. So you are seeing disordered eating, over-exercising, and purging happens in this. So these are two broken people who are they're very attracted to each other, but there's just so much mess in here, okay? This story is very hard to read, but it was so good. This was duet narrated by Jason Clark and Molly Stark. It was great, you guys. Like, this is gonna tear your guts out, but I gave this 4.5 stars, and it's a 3.5 on the spice scale. There's some edging and foiled orgasms in here that were really good. There's forced proximity, grumpy sunshine. You know, we have a singer, or I mean, a band member, like singer-songwriter is what I have in here. And there is also an accidental pregnancy in here. Don't want to just not share that. So I really enjoyed this, even though it was hard. I definitely want to read the other series from her, because I feel like this one, I got a lot of color to kind of what goes on in that series for sure. And there was just a lot, like there was a lot with that. It was intense. So yeah. But anyway, those are the 10 books that I read this week. That's awesome. It felt so good to be back on top of it. Granted, a lot of them were shorter, but I don't care. It felt good. It felt good. So yeah, go ahead, check out the links down below I have for these. Make sure you check out my Patreon so that you can be there for all the giveaways I have. And again, thank you so much to Bessa for sponsoring this video. You guys go check out the Whisper collection. It is amazing. Okay, like it's fantastic. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.